We know some of you that may be VIP ticket holders are already on your way to the special OFFA after party. And don't worry, that party's going to be going all night long. So thank you, the rest of you, for sticking around. We now have a very special Q&A with two of the lead talents of the film. Please welcome to the stage back Rob Grabo and Alyssa Groening. All right, so we're going to start this evening just by doing a few of our curated questions, and then we're going to open the floor to some of you if you would like to ask either Rob or Alyssa anything this evening. So first, Rob, start by telling, first of all, congratulations, both of you, on an outstanding motion picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think it's deeply moving, heartfelt, and all of us are really grateful to you for sharing this with us tonight. Rob, can you start by telling us, where did the idea come from for the story of the Year of the Dog?
So I grew up in Alaska for most of my early childhood, and I grew up in really small rural communities. And one of the villages I grew up in, Takatna, had 42 people, and it was about 300 miles from any road. And we would, one year when I lived there in second grade, it got 87 below. And at that temperature, you can't, trucks don't work, snow machines don't work, metal becomes brittle. And the only way to get around was by dog sled. So that's how I went to school, and that's how people in the village got medicine, and that's how people got transported. So I kind of grew up in that environment. Just after acting school, I left when my mom was going through cancer treatment, and I went on a dog sled ride with a guy in Montana, and he shared with me, he was a recovering addict, and he was just barely hanging on. And he shared the story of one of his lead dogs that was an Alaskan Husky, how it was about a 39-pound dog. And he shared how it had pulled 2,700 pounds in a state weight pull competition and broke all these records against these much larger dogs. And so when I got home, I kind of ripped off that story in my own childhood and kind of interweaved just real things that happened to either me or people that I knew in my life. And so that's what the story was.
And Alyssa, talk to us about your experience when you first got the script. When Rob showed you the final screenplay, what was your first impression reading it?
So when Rob first sent me the script, I sort of fell in love with the characters because I don't know about any of you, but at least in my life, I've known somebody who was an addict or a recovering alcoholic. And the characters just felt real and honest and genuine, and their stories I felt needed to be told. And I said, this is beautiful. I would love to audition and be a part of this film. And I was really just honored to be asked, honestly.
One of the things that stood out to me when I saw the film for the first time was how a lot of the story is about letting ourselves learn to be vulnerable, finding practical ways in which we show vulnerability and show it not just to ourselves, but to each other and to the relationships we can have with animals as well. How did both of you go about showing this in a tangible way on screen?
Well, I think that's as actors, I think that's sort of the beautiful thing for us is we practice vulnerability on a regular basis. I won't say it's easy, but the more that you can't give an authentic performance without becoming vulnerable. So for me, I really try to associate myself with Julie, understanding what that would feel like to be in your mother's shadow or to never feel enough. I really understood her or tried to understand her. And I think that's how you give an authentic performance, is really by understanding somebody, spending time getting to know them, learning why they're different from you versus judging why they're different from you.
Yeah. Just a quick note about Alyssa. We had a lot of people audition for that role, and when Alyssa sent in her submission, it was just like completely effortless, and there was no false note anywhere. And so it was really lucky to have her. You know, I kind of think of vulnerability as the ability to just kind of be ourselves and to truthfully communicate what is going on for us emotionally. And I think, you know, sometimes that gets conditioned out of us when we're kids in certain ways, maybe get really excited about getting a cookie, and we won't get the cookie unless we ask nicely. And so then we learn to kind of like curtail our emotions a little bit in order to function in society. And that's super important. But then I lost people close to me to addiction when I was younger, and one of the consistent things that I felt and experienced through that was this gap between what was going on for them and what they felt comfortable sharing. And I think, it's incumbent on all of us to have the ability to, I believe, directly share, or it's important to develop, I think, the ability to really share emotionally what is true for us. But then it's also important for society, I think, maybe it's worth considering holding space for that as well, and learning, that we don't need to fix somebody, we don't need to make them better, we can just be there with what we're also feeling. So I think that theme of vulnerability was something we really wanted to explore with this as well.
So what is the connection between the purpose and benefit of vulnerability, connecting it to the subject of addiction? What's the relationship between these two ideas?
Well, there's a quote at the end of the film that's attributed correctly to Johann Hari, and he had done a lot of research, and I can go into it more later if anyone's interested, but he basically landed on the idea that the opposite of addiction is connection. And in order to have genuine connection, and part of the, this is also, I think, what Alyssa was mentioning with acting, is in order to have connection, both people have to be vulnerable, and they have to allow what is happening in the other person emotionally to affect them emotionally and intuitively. And that emotional relationship is where I believe connection is found. And so when we feel connected, I think there is a correlation potentially in the healing ability of connection when it comes to addiction and alcoholism.
Let's go on now to talking about everyone's favorite part of the movie, and that's You Pick.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dogs for a minute here. Now? It's no bit of new information to anyone here, especially if you work in the industry. It is a challenge to work with animals on a set. So what were some of the highs and lows of getting to work with not just You Pick, but all of the dogs in filming the movie?
I mean, well, if you don't love dogs, I don't know what you're doing here. But no, I mean, the thing is, the dogs are so amazing, and all they want to do is love on you. And Caleb, which is the You Pick's actual name, well, I'll let Rob talk about Caleb, because he was a rescue. He was actually adopted for the film, to be honest. So I'm gonna let you tell that story, but working with him, he was just amazing. He really, to not have been an actor dog before, was kind of fantastic. But I mean, how do you not love working with animals, really? I didn't feel challenged at all. I just got to love on a dog all day.
Yeah, he was amazing. So he's a real life rescue, and he was passed between homes because the owners kept saying he's too much dog and he's too energetic, and he's just a Siberian Husky. They're just high energy and willful and all those wonderful qualities. And I remember they would warn you in acting school, you don't want to act with dogs or kids because they're so spontaneous that they'll overshadow you in scenes. And it was the most delightful thing on the planet. Like the scenes early on where there was a scene where we're shooting the heavy kind of scene where I'm talking about my Newfoundland Basil and how he passed away. And Caleb would, for no reason, he would just go over to Michael Spears, the actor who played Fred, and start sniffing his feet and then start sneezing for 15, 20-second chunks. And this is a serious scene. And then he would walk back over to me, and then he would walk back to Michael, sniff his feet, and start sneezing again. And he just did that for about 10, 15 minutes. And we ended up keeping it in the film because it was just so good. I mean, it was so delightful because they are so present and they just do what they want. And as actors, you just have to respond to it. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Let's talk a minute about your other wonderful co-star, Michael Spears.
Yeah.
Now, to some of you eagle eyes in the audience, if he was familiar to you, he was also a member of the cast of the 1990 film Dances with Wolves, which you may remember was a Best Picture winner that year. If there was a third character to the two of you, Michael was a huge part of the movie. What was the casting process like in working with him, not just as a sponsor in the story, but as an actor in the production?
He's on 1923 currently and Reservation Dogs, which are two big hits right now in the US. And then John Proudstar, who played Greg, is also on Reservation Dogs. And both of them they're just such experienced actors, and they just show up and they're professional on set. I was trying to I wanted to really honor what Matt was going through. And so I would be really serious most of the time on set and trying to kind of hang on to this. And they could just come in, be light, really nice and joking with everybody, and then turn it on when the camera's on. It was incredible to learn from the way they carried themselves on set, from their talents as actors. It was just a gift. John sent in his audition tape first, where he was doing the AA scene, talking about when his father broke his dog's back, which is based on a true story that happened to someone I knew, which is horrifying. And John gave one of the best auditions I've ever seen. And we just got really lucky to be able to work with them both.
Now, here in Canada, yesterday was National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a new holiday that we have, but it's a day of learning, reconciliation, of listening, and of learning new stories. I think now obviously this is set in Montana and this is an American production, but there's a lot of great subplot and dialogue in this movie about the Indigenous community, voices, and people. What was your approach to tackling some of this subject matter? But both of you, both as the screenwriter and as performers.
Well, for my part, I grew up in rural Alaska, including in Yupik and Athabascan villages. And so that was part of my early childhood. I hesitate to speak on this topic too much, other than to say, I think one of the most important things that can happen is, to have roles that are non-race specific. For example, in our film, the role that Michael Spears played could have been played by any race. And then when we cast Michael, he came in and he brought things that were important to him and his background into the role. Like, prior to making this film, I've never seen a Native American actor cast as an investment banker. It's like someone who's an investment banker who also happens to be Indigenous. That kind of thing to me is just kind of mind-blowing personally. And I think things like that, it's overdue and it's past time for that kind of thing to change. In the case of our film, none of the roles were really race specific. John Proudstar's character had a little bit of that, but the idea was that they're human beings first and foremost, and then they bring their background to the character as they see fit. And so in making this film, what we did is we just made it a collaboration. Like the conversation about the Atlanta Braves hat happened organically. That wasn't scripted where we got into that. That was something that came up organically on set. If John had input, we went with that. If Michael had input, we went with that. And we just made it a big collaborative sort of project.
And we had some conversations, actually, Rob and I, just kind of about how we felt about that particular part of the scene, to be honest, or the film. And I think all I will really say about it is it starts conversations. It starts important conversations. So regardless of how you feel about it, one way or the other, it gets us talking. And I think that was the point of that scene specifically, is to open the door to conversations.
I think I can speak for everyone. This was a really positive, impactful way of opening those doors and beginning those conversations. So thank you, both of you, for your creative efforts and on all aspects we've covered so far. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person here with questions. And so if you have anything that you would love to ask either Rob or Alyssa, now is the time. We're going to open it up to the floor. Forgive me, there's a bit of light, so I'm going to stand up here. If you have a question you would like to ask, just raise your hand. We will call on you. Whoop. There was a way in the back. Hello, about row Q. Nice and loud, please.
I noticed the weather changes quite a bit. That cause any issues on set with costumes or clothing or anything to do with that?
Yes. not with costumes or clothing, but obviously this film was set in winter, and the first 2 weeks we were shooting in January in Montana. The first 2 weeks we had absolutely no snow. And we're just like, what are we going to do? We shot 140 scenes in 19 days. And so for half our shoot that was supposed to be in snow, we didn't have it. And so we just got really lucky. We ended up having like an 8-day break before we finished the second half. And during that 8-day break, we went from no snow to 8 inches of snow. And so then, it was a continuity nightmare because we were shooting out of order, but we were able to make it work. And Alyssa and I improv some lines that helped at least justify how we went from no snow to suddenly there's snow everywhere. But it was it was a good catch, and that was definitely a challenge.
What was the greatest challenge of having to film during the winter in Montana?
Well, I don't know if it's the greatest challenge about Montana specifically, but we did shoot in the middle of a pandemic. So there's that.
That was a challenge. There was one day where we were supposed to shoot our ending, mushing off into the sunset scene. And the first day we were scheduled to do that, it was, I think, 24 below. So we went from like no snow to 24 below. And, we had to like push that day back. One of the things I learned about filmmaking in this experience was that it is basically on the producing side, a constant like survival thing where you're just trying to put out fire after fire after fire and just hope that you can put them out long enough that you can finish. So there were a lot of challenges throughout, weather and other.
Do we have anyone else? Hello, yes.
What is your next project for both of you?
What is your next project?
Oh man. I do not currently have anything on the books, but I am auditioning. How's that?
That means she's available, ladies and gentlemen.
And so talented. There's a film that we're interested in shooting possibly next year. It's still a little too early to talk too much about it, but we have something else in the works. It won't deal with addiction, but it'll have heart to it for sure.
Will it have more dogs?
Obviously, it has to.
You heard it here, the Decade of the Dog coming summer 2024. Hello, yes. What happened to you, or Caleb, who plays Yupik, yes? Where's Caleb now?
Yeah. So Caleb was adopted by a family in Southern California. So he's in Palmdale, California. And he currently does Petco commercials, which also a Siberian Husky in Southern California feels a little odd, but he seems to love it. And he plays with a beagle that's like his best friend. And his name is Butch. And that's his life now. He doesn't return my calls. We talk about this.
He's literal diva now.
Yeah, he's got a little attitude, but it's fine. He's lovable.
That is the happiest retirement story I've ever heard. I love that he went from shooting in Montana winters and now gets to live in Southern California. I think we have time for one or two more questions. If we have one, yes, hello. How do you prepare yourselves for deeply emotional scenes while also multitasking behind the camera?
Go ahead.
Well, a lot of the prep is done beforehand, right? Like with acting, one of the ways I've come to view it is, you're not really acting. You're kind of, for me, I identify a part in myself where I can kind of meet this character and I know what it feels like to be alone and I know what it feels like to be rejected and to feel isolated. And I spent a lot of prep time reliving, some difficult stuff in my life and then spending a lot of time in that place and then relating to the world from that place. So that was easier to go into that when I had to for a scene. I mean, it is just it really is an exercise in concentration, like really just focusing on what, like I'm in producer mode, but I still have some connection to the emotional life of, the next scene that's going to be coming up. And I know what scene we're going to be shooting. I know what it requires of me emotionally. I know where we are in the story. And I hang on to a little bit of that while I'm producing. And then, we go to the scene and I spend a few minutes dropping into that, had some music in that I associated with where I was going. And then you go into that and then the scene's over and you're back to producing. And it's a hanging on by your fingernails kind of thing where you're just trying to stay focused long enough to get it executed.
And I think for me, in terms of getting into an emotional place, there's been a few times in some of the scenes between the two of us that were really heavy, and I felt them very deeply where I had to hey, I just need a minute. I need a beat. I need a few seconds to kind of decompress that moment. But also when I would leave set for the day, I go and do something fun for myself. I go and sort of, get something, make myself happy in a way that re-energizes that, because you don't want to live in that space for very long, especially that heavy material. I know Rob can speak to this, is if you live there too long, it becomes part of your regular life. So finding things and outlets, places to take that energy and leave it behind when you leave set. I mean, I think we kind of do that. We compartmentalize every day, don't we? So it's not any different than sort of how we live our lives.
We're almost out of time, but before we finish, I have one more question I'd like to ask both of you. One of the best parts of the Oakville Film Festival is we get to engage as our industry day tomorrow, but also a chance to speak directly to the audiences and live stream of young up-and-coming filmmakers. And we have a wonderful institution here in Oakville called Sheridan College. You may have heard of them. And they have multiple filmmaking programs, and we have dozens of their alumni working on projects in this year's festival. But we also have an audience of hundreds of aspiring filmmakers, both on and off camera. What is the best single piece of advice you could give to these aspiring filmmakers as they are beginning or branching into their new careers?
Don't listen to your dad.
It's great advice.
No, legitimately, I always encourage young people, because I wanted to be an actor since I was 5 years old. And I told my mom I wanted to be on TV like Wonder Woman. So Linda Carter was my hero at 5. But I really think that people who haven't been in the industry or don't have the desire or know what it means to be an actor or a creative, they don't understand you. And so my parents just didn't get it. And it was okay. But if I had listened to them, I don't think I would be the person I am today. And I would have been checking their boxes instead of the ones that make me happy. So listen to your dad for a while, but then don't listen to your dad.
Love that. Yeah, I think related to that, I mean, there is no one else in the world that has any of our exact stories, our genetic makeup, our life experiences, and every single human being is unique and special, and not more so than any other human being, but not less so either. And there is a unique story that they have. And if it's something they care about, I think you find something that really resonates. Like, you think about it and it excites you, and then you go and you just do it. You just try to do it to the very best of your ability. And just remember that there's something about you that is completely unique that no one else can ever exactly emulate.
Do the best you can, be yourself, check your own boxes. Yeah. Fabulous advice. Thank you. Yes, please give us a big hearty round of applause
so much
for Rob Grabo and Alyssa Groening and their wonderful team for the Year of the Dog.
Thank you so much for
Thank you all
coming
for
out.
coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Friends, this concludes this evening's presentation here at the Oakville Center. But just a couple of quick reminders. This is not the only event we're having as part of the Oakville Film Festival this week. In fact, there are 19 other feature movies that we are screening over the next 4 days, and we would love for you to be part of them. We have our gala tomorrow night, Polarized, right back here on this stage. And then we have over a dozen wonderful events happening at film.ca cinemas all day Saturday and Sunday. Tickets are still available, and they are on sale right now at www.offa.ca. If you loved The Year of the Dog, vote for it for the People's Choice Award, the Audience Choice Award, because not only could The Year of the Dog be the big winner, but you could be too. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but it was part of the trailer reel. One person, one voter who votes for any of the movies in the Audience Choice Award this year is going to win a sponsored prize by some of the festival's leading sponsors of Expedia Cruises Oakville and Celebrity Cruises. You're going to win a trip for two on a week-long, all-expenses-paid trip to Athens, Greece. You could win a week-long cruise. Sorry, the airfare is not included, but everything else is. Either way, it's still a $10,000 cruise you could win and is a great reason to vote, as if the movie wasn't already a good enough reason. Lastly, if you are joining us as one of our VIP pass holders for tonight's opening, Ce Soir Brasserie is where the follow-up party is taking place. We'd love to see you there if you've got your tickets. Other than that, please, everyone have a safe trip home. And thank you so much for joining us for the Year of the Dog tonight. And to all of you at home watching, thank you for joining us too. My name has been Tyler Collins. It's been my pleasure to be your MC. Have a great night. Safe trip home, everybody.